What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Dynasty Pros Fantasy Show. I'm your host, Bob Miller. I've got with us here, I've got Justin Taylor. Everybody knows him as JT Brew. And I also have Tommy Harvey over here. Guys, how we doing?
Good, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's been a good little minute. Just sitting here watching this intro, and I'm thinking, man, we might have to do a little intro after all these friggin' free agent moves and trades and everything. I'm like, hey, who's in that? Do I have any is there Derrick Henry in there? Is there Joe Mixon? I mean, what's going on in there? I gotta go back and watch this thing just to make sure who we've got going on in there, to be honest with you. So guys, been pretty wild last couple of days, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
A little bit.
Anything jump out to you all off the bat? You know, I mean, whether it's the running back, all the running back moves or something. I mean, what's really stuck out in your all's mind here?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing is the running backs, how quickly they went off the board and the destinations of them. There were a couple that were kind of out of left field. You know, the Josh Jacobs going to Green Bay. I think anybody really saw that one coming.
No, nobody saw that one.
Yeah, for me, I think it's pretty indicative of where some of these teams think they want to go in the draft, because it seems like guys are they're signing some vets right now as a precaution in case they go into the draft and can't get the guy they want. It seems like that for a little bit. Me with some of these QBs, some of these running backs. It just seems like some teams are going in there like, hey, we don't want to miss out on everyone, so let's go get a guy now in case we can't get the guy we really want in the draft. So it's been pretty interesting. The other thing for me is just in some of these players swapping teams. The question for me is like, were they just kind of tired of this player? Are they ready to move on? Because some of these guys signed almost exact same deals to go somewhere else. And it was like they just swapped players. So I thought that was pretty interesting on how some of these deals broke down and where guys ended up going. I think some of these are better fits than others, and some of them are just they're head scratchers. You're just not quite sure why the team or the player did what they did there, but we'll break that down.
yeah. There was a lot. Go ahead.
You had mentioned, teams making moves based off them possibly not being able to get somebody in the draft, but I think you can look at the Raiders kind of doing the same thing, signing Gardner Minshew in case they're not able to get somebody like a Justin Fields.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think, this is setting up for the Raiders. I kept, I didn't have any kind of inside knowledge whatsoever, but I just felt like the Raiders were going to try to move up and get Jaden Daniels in this draft. And this feels like a move like, we don't know if we can move up. And we're signing Gardner Minshew just in case. And then if we have to wait on a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix, take one of those guys in like the second or third round, this is like, okay, we'll take him just in case we don't get one of these guys. That's what it feels like to me. It doesn't feel like the Raiders are like, Minshew's our man. He's going to start this year. We're bringing him in to be the guy. It's like, okay, we had to make a move just in case it doesn't work out with all these other options we want. Now, I feel like there was a few options like that with QBs, especially. The Sam Darnold signing to the Vikings felt the same way. Like, we got to get a guy in case every other option that we want to do falls apart. We got somebody that we don't think is going to completely crush us. We're not going to be horrible. So that's why I think you saw a lot of these 1-year deals where teams are going like, is that our first choice? Maybe not, but we're taking them in, so we're not just hung out to dry if something, if we miss the guy in the draft or, we think this guy later on, we didn't have time to wait on him because we didn't want to miss out on everyone else. So I think there's some teams that are going to wait around and get some really, really nice deals in free agency. But right now, everybody's out there buying. They're buying quick because they want to get guys before everybody else gets them. But you know how it always goes. Yeah, Cowboys. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Every once in a while, you see teams, and then all of a sudden they end up getting these really team-friendly deals because they kind of waited, and people kind of blew their load early, and then all their money's gone, and they're like, oh. And then like there's only a couple teams that can sign a guy, and they're like, I guess I'll take that deal. And sometimes you get some really great deals that way.
Yeah, and it's kind of how it seems like it's kind of how the Baltimore Ravens do business. They never go crazy on day one of free agency, and really they barely go crazy on day two It's a lot of people. It's like buying a car and paying too much money for it. When you get upside down in a vehicle, a lot of these teams just get crazy, excited on day one and blow all this money. And here in the next year or two, they're going to be in cap hell. I mean, it happens, all the time. There's some teams that play it smart, and there's a lot of those guys. I mean, Pittsburgh does a very good job of it. Baltimore does a very good job of it. New England used to do a pretty good job of it, but golly, man, after Tom Brady left there, they really got exposed. I mean, if you could make a bad decision, Bill Belichick was doing it. So
yeah, they've been rough lately. I'm not sure what that direction was going in. I was still kind of convinced that they might move out of the 3 pick and try to load up on picks, knowing they're years away. And then after they moved Mac Jones for a 6th rounder, I'm like, ooh, I have no idea where this team's going. Now it feels like they have to take a QB.
Well, they could also make a trade for Justin Fields and keep that number 3 pick on like Marvin Harrison Jr. So
yeah, Tommy and I were having that conversation earlier on the phone. I was like, yeah, they could be a player for that, because I mean, Justin Fields, his price has to be dropping. I mean, he's running out of landing spots. However, I do think like Sam Darnold signed for kind of backup money, and so did Gardner Minshew. Even though I think Gardner Minshew is more serviceable, they still
be $25 million.
Who's that?
Gardner. Didn't they give him $25 million?
Yeah, it was Gardner Minshew was a 2-year, $25 million. So 12 and a half a year, which I mean,
yeah.
I love Gardner Minshew as a backup for the Colts, but 12 and a half is pretty good. The only thing is, a lot of these teams didn't break the bank, so I think they're leaving it open to maybe a Fields move. You know what I'm saying? It's like, would you go back and if you get a better deal on Fields, do you not take Fields because you signed Sam Darnold to a 1-year, $10 million deal?
Exactly.
Like, no,
yeah,
but you still make the move.
I would highly doubt that the Bears would give the Vikings any type of discount.
Oh, I agree with you, but that's why I'm saying I think we saw what some of these teams are thinking. They're thinking, hey, we got to get somebody just in case, and they may be slightly overpaid to just get the just in case they don't get the rookie they want. There is a guy that maybe they could trade for. I think the Vikings would be okay with Sam Darnold to start all year, but I'm a weirdo that I think Sam Darnold isn't as bad as some people think. But he's
let me
still
ask
young.
you this:
I give him a year, but I don't think a 1-year, $10 million deal stops you from making any kind of moves at QB. Personally,
no.
Well, and here's kind of an angle I thought of yesterday with Gardner Minshew is, what if the Raiders signed Gardner Minshew as kind of a leverage to get a better deal on Justin Fields, like them coming, like them going to the Bears and say, listen, world's kind of changed here a little bit. We don't need Justin Fields like that, so we'll give you this instead of this.
I mean, that makes sense.
I agree with you, Tommy. I think I think teams are playing okay. We're covering our asses, I think the Raiders are saying, hey, we're covering our ass in case we can't make a move for Fields, in case we can't move up and get a guy we want in the draft. Because I think they'd go into the season with Minshew. Do I think they want to? I don't think they want to, but I think they're setting it up in case it ends up being like a last second resort as they have to do that. But I think you're right. Like then they're like, hey, we can take Fields, but also Aiden O'Connell's their other quarterback. They've got no money. I mean, they're paying too much for Minshew at 12 and a half, but like they got nothing in Aiden O'Connell. So it's not like they can't take another QB on that will absolutely murder them. And then I also think if we didn't see teams learn their lesson about not having a solid veteran quarterback as a backup last year, teams learned it this offseason because everybody that has an old QB that is in the playoff hunt went out and got another backup, good, solid backup QB right away. So they don't get stuck like the Jets did last year going, oh, shit. What are we going to do now? They went out and got a Tyrod Taylor, which I think was smart. I actually think that Jameis Winston signing to the Browns was very smart. I actually
Yep.
thought they're paying 8.75 to Jameis, but I haven't seen a lot of love out of Watson, and Jameis is a guy that's going to be able to come in and keep that offense rolling if he goes out for any reason. So I thought that was a sneaky good signing by the Browns.
And they offered a contract to Joe Flacco. They were about to try and re-sign Flacco. However, Deshaun Watson nixed it. He didn't want it to happen. He did not want Flacco back there.
He did not want Flacco back because he knew that the fans were going to start chanting Flacco game one. They were going to be yelling for Flacco game one to come back in. And he was like, I don't want that. He's like, I don't want that. I've been on record, and hopefully he gets it back together, but I just think Watson's washed. I don't think we're ever going to see the Deshaun Watson we saw in Houston ever again. Now, can he be a serviceable NFL quarterback? Yes. I do think he can be a starter level NFL quarterback. Is he top 5? No way. Is he top 10? I don't think so. I think top 15 is the best you're going to get out of him. And when you're paying the money you're paying him to be top 15, that's what hurts to me.
Just Cleveland Browns are going to.
Speaking of Joe Flacco, what do you think his market is right now? Do you think it's somebody like Denver? Him go to Denver for a year,
somebody's going to
draft somebody like a Bo Nix to take over, midway through the season or something.
This is what it feels like with everybody getting these older veteran QBs. They're either backing up their already older veteran QB to make sure they're not totally out of it, and then you have these teams that are like, we're probably not a playoff team, we're a younger team, so they're figuring out like, hey, we're going to go younger scale or get a guy on a 1-year deal in case we can't get a guy in the draft. Like that's what Minshew feels like to me. Like I could see the Raiders then going out and going, hey, can we get Michael Penix or Bo Nix? But can we get him in like the second or third round because we don't have to be desperate to overdraft them. And then we can see what we got. And if they end up being nothing, we got a third rounder in them, not a first. I feel like that's where some of these teams are setting themselves up. I definitely could see Flacco at like a Broncos if it's just everything else falls apart. Now, here's something that's interesting. There wasn't a lot of talk about today, but I started seeing some stuff come across the wires. There's some talk about Daniel Jones with the Giants, that he ends up not being there. Now, that would be shocking to me. I don't know what the dead money for them would be, but it seems like it would be a lot. Is that anything you guys have heard or anything you looked at? I mean, I love Drew Lock. I was hoping he was going to go to the Colts, be the backup to AR, but he's now a Giant. I like that signing for him there, but like, is there any chance they go, hey, we're out on Daniel Jones and Drew Lock's our guy? Drew Lock feels like the save. He feels like the safe. Oh, we sign him as a backup in case we get rid of Daniel Jones and we can't trade up in the draft, because it seems like they really want to trade up in the draft and draft someone. And this is like maybe the safety plan if that doesn't happen.
I would have just kept Tyrod Taylor, but yeah, I don't think they can afford to let Jones go unless something happens in the draft.
There was a kind of a fake tweet out there earlier today about Daniel Jones being released.
Yeah.
But other than
somehow that clown has like 13,000 followers too. Yeah. It's kind of funny.
It just I heard some chatter about it. Like, would they release him? And I just thought, man, there's no way. I don't know if the Giants could eat that. They would have. It just seemed like. But we also said it was crazy for the Broncos to eat $84 million for Russell Wilson, and guess what they did? Eat $84 million. So I guess nothing's out of the realm of possibility. But that's the question. Is like, if say the Giants do move up in the draft, get in a position where they can take a QB. Do they move? Who would be a suitor for Daniel Jones? I mean, maybe the Broncos. There's only a few teams out there without a starting QB who would like maybe set over. I mean, are the Seahawks really set? Are they like they feel real good about Geno the next 2-3 years? Are they thinking, hey, we got to start looking for somebody behind Geno here? So I think there's still some room to move. It's getting it's getting tighter with like what teams can do what, but I still think there's some room to move here in the quarterback market. Just because teams have signed guys, I don't think that means these teams are done trying to make moves at QB.
Well, I think the draft's going to play a big part because I think you have Minnesota and Denver picking 11th and 12th. And I really think
that Vegas picking 13th.
And Vegas right there at 13. Yep.
Exactly. And I think that some of these top, like I keep thinking of Atlanta at number 8 trading back because I don't think the Bears at 9 would want to trade back because there's a good possibility they could grab a really, really strong wide receiver out there. If they can come away with Caleb Williams and then like a Dunze or something there, I mean,
well, it kind of depends on what the Falcons do in front of them, because if the Falcons go Roma Dunze, then I could definitely see the Bears trading back.
I don't think the Falcons take the receiver. I think
I
like
don't either. I think they go edge with like Jared Verse, but yeah.
I was thinking Dallas Turner at that spot.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of who I had him mocked to, but the more and more I think about it, I mean, those 3 teams we just talked about, the Raiders, the Vikings, the Broncos, they would love to trade up there, that number 8 spot, in front of one another just to grab. I'm not the biggest McCarthy. JJ McCarthy is an okay quarterback. He doesn't do a whole lot for me, but I'm higher on Michael Penix than most people are. And I like him actually much, much better than McCarthy, even though a lot of people have McCarthy way ahead of him. I think Michael Penix would be fantastic in Minnesota. I think that would be a phenomenal landing spot for him. But then you have a McCarthy that can, listen, McCarthy to Denver. There you go. Boom, boom, boom. And then 13, maybe let's just say the Raiders do trade for Justin Fields. So, all 3 problems solved. Too bad for Flacco.
I think that might end up being the perfect trade spot there at 8 with Atlanta.
I think so too.
You've got multiple teams that all kind of want to get in there. If you're wanting to trade back, that's what you want. You want more than 2 teams fighting so you can keep selling them. Oh, these guys are going to give me more. This guy's going to give me more. You better give me more. That's what you want. I could definitely see them moving back. But this is also, Bob, kind of what you're talking about. I think if one of these teams can't get in that spot where they get McCarthy, that's where I'm like, this is where I see the Darnold signing coming in. This is where I see the Minshew signing coming in. They're going, hey, if we can't get into 8th and get McCarthy or top 10 and get McCarthy, let's sign a veteran now. And then let's hope that Penix, Nix, one of the guys, whoever they have high on their draft board and they say, hey, we don't have to overdraft now. Let's wait till the 2nd round. Let's maybe wait till the early 3rd and see if that guy gets to us. But we don't have to now trade up in the 2nd to get him because we do have somebody. It's not like we're desperate. This to me feels like Minnesota or the Raiders could be 2 nice landing spots for him. And I'm not against him. So I feel like I'm anti him and Bo Nix in a lot of these podcasts. I'm not anti those guys. I feel like I'm more in the 3rd round. I love taking a shot on those guys. Absolutely love it in the 3rd round. I'm just not in the 1st round on those guys. For me, I'm just not taking those guys that early value wise. But if they fell to me in like late 2nd, early 3rd, if I'm one of those teams, I am absolutely grabbing those guys up.
But there's been so many quarterbacks that have been taken a lot higher than they most likely should have.
Mitchell absolutely.
Jones, but
Mac Jones.
So it's gonna, it's bound to happen. But I'm going to tell you another team that I would keep an eye on trading back is the LA Chargers. The Chargers have a lot of issues right now, starting with the salary cap. Man, I can't remember exactly what it is, but I think they're $25 million over the cap as of right now, and they have to be at 0 or positive by 4:00 tomorrow.
Yeah, they've got some really expensive players. Khalil Mack,
they really
Bosa,
do.
Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. I mean,
Yes.
that team
I
has
mean,
got just huge $20+ million
yeah,
contracts all
if
over the place.
if they can cut or trade Khalil Mack, that's going to save them 23 mil there. If they cut Keenan Allen, trade him, that's 23 million there. Mike Williams would save them 20. I mean, you got to think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
That seems like a must.
The smart play here would be to cut Khalil Mack and cut Mike Williams. Then all of a sudden you're well within in the cap room there.
Well, they've
you could
been talking. I
restructure
mean,
Keenan Allen.
I
did that.
I would
they could
not.
cut those guys. They could restructure Keenan
Yeah.
Allen and make him
well,
more
they
like
restructured Keenan
10,
Allen.
12.
But
he's at
if you were
23, right?
if you were to cut the other two, now all of a sudden you don't have to do anything with Keenan Allen right now. You can wait another year with that. If you cut the other two, that now you're saving what $43 million or whatever it is. That right there gets you well within the cap. So that also affords you the ability to wait another year on Keenan Allen, on Joey Bosa to kind of see what happens with this 2024 team.
Yeah, but I don't think that they're going to improve by subtraction. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they didn't have the team to do it already. Not even
those guys,
close.
Yeah, but even Mike Williams is rarely on the field anyways.
Yeah. Mike Williams is gone, man. He's got to go.
And Khalil Mack is what, 35? So
I mean, he had a monster year last year, but if you go back and break down his games, he was best ball genius because it was like 2 or 3 games. He absolutely 5 sacks. He had like 3 monster games last year. But outside of those 3 monster games, I know Joey Bosa. You hate to get rid of Joey Bosa, but he's been another guy that's been Mike Williams, injured all the time. And so better coaching staff, some decent draft picks. I think the Chargers were the disappointment in the league last year as far as a team that we thought should have been in the mix in the playoffs and a possible contender in the AFC. And for them to be as bad as they were was just unbelievable. But I think Harbaugh turns that around quicker than people think because I think that team has talent. I think that team just ran off the rails.
Yep.
Injuries just absolutely destroyed them. And it seemed like Staley had just lost that team. So I don't think they're that far away from being right back in the mix, but they've definitely got to make some nice moves, and they've got to clear some space with some guys.
Yeah, that's the thing. They've got to focus on the salary cap there. And yes, I obviously think coaching will help. Injuries did hurt, but a lot of folks have someone like a Malik Neighbors or something projected to go there at the 5th pick. I mean, there's been some other mocks that. So I'm thinking like if that's another great spot for a team to trade up for a quarterback. If LA can drop back, accumulate draft picks, what they most certainly will, with someone moving to the 5th overall pick, they will get a complete haul for that. That can solve a lot of problems. They could move back to number 10, number 11, number 12, number 13, somewhere around there. Rack up some picks, solve some, go select a lot of, these players that are going to be on their rookie contracts. That's going to help out a lot for what they're really, really targeting to do and to get under that cap. I mean, they've had trade talks, with several teams about Keenan Allen. I don't think Mike Williams is going to go. I think that he's getting cut. No one's trading for him, but Keenan Allen, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa could. They've had trade talks with a lot of teams. Just Keenan Allen's probably. I don't see that being a fit like Kansas City clearing up room today with Patrick Mahomes restructuring. They're not going to trade him within the division by any means, but that could be a spot for maybe a DeAndre Hopkins or
Hollywood.
People keep linking Hollywood Brown to him, but I don't know what that's really going to do for him. I would much rather go for someone like a Calvin Ridley, over Hollywood.
Well, Ridley's probably going back to Jacksonville.
Yeah, that's the most likely place. New England was, really trying to push hard for him, but that doesn't.
If I'm Calvin Ridley, I want to go back to Jacksonville. Even if New England's giving me more money, I want to go back to Jacksonville. I mean, that's a place where I'm going to have a shot to still put up good stats, do some things. I mean, you just don't know what you're getting into in New England. But, Bob, I'm with you. I think that number 5 pick is a prime spot for the Chargers to move back 10, 11, 12. They could still get one of the top 2 or 3 defensive ends. They could still get one of the top O linemen, which I think they really want an O lineman. And if anything else, they could still get wide receiver there. But hey, well, if they move back there, get another first next year and a second this year, and they turn around and say, okay, well, we're going to go O line at 11 or 12, and we're just going to wait to the second round and take a wide receiver. Since this class is so loaded at wide receiver, you can just wait and take a wide receiver in the second round. I if I'm them, I'm all over that. If I can get
but someone's
second, do that.
And we were talking about the New York Giants a little while ago. Here's the thing, we don't know what's going on with Daniel Jones. They have to be very frustrated there, but New York picks at number 6. That's another play. I mean, who wouldn't think that they wouldn't take a quarterback there?
Malik Nabers.
A quarterback playing at their what's that?
I think they're going to take Malik Nabers right there.
Well, they could if he falls to them. I mean,
they are so depleted of skill position talent there. Who else is there to throw the ball to? You got Jalen Hyatt, Darren Waller, Darius Slayton. Those guys don't instill fear in.
I mean, I thought Paris Campbell would have a shot to be involved last year, and it was nada. I mean, he did nothing with the Giants. So, I mean, you're right. I mean, if you've ever seen a team with a glaring weakness, it's the New York Giants and wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean
they need a wide.
It's really difficult. It's really difficult to pin all the blame on Daniel Jones when he has nobody to throw the ball to.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. But with them being a possibility, there's a good possibility of them maybe looking at quarterback there with some of these guys sitting there. So that might motivate someone to trade up in front of them at number 5 with the Chargers. So, just a thought there. So, let's talk about some of the, some of the moves for today. Let's start off with the Bengals trading Joe Mixon to the Houston Texans. I mean, the Houston Texans made a lot of moves today. The Joe Mixon trade to them was pretty much one of the first things this morning. What's your guys' thoughts on this? Is Joe Mixon, I mean, he has to be, do you think his stock has gone up, gone down? You think, as far as fantasy value, fantasy production, you think he's kind of in the, staying the same? What do you guys think?
I think he probably does pretty similar to what Devin Singletary did this year for them.
Which is good.
Yeah, which is fine. 800 plus yards and, however many receptions he got. But I don't think Joe Mixon has the same type of juice he did 3-4 years ago, obviously. But I think it's a fine trade for them. I mean, they didn't give up anything, 7th round pick. So, it made perfect sense for them to do it.
I agree with you. I think, he brings them a veteran guy. Singletary did most of his damage the last half of the season. I mean, if you had him in playoffs in fantasy football, he was a super nice surprise. I mean, he helped out big time down the stretch. I don't see a monster season for Mixon, but I think he's going to be solid. And if you're looking for someone like as your second or third RB in fantasy, I think you go out and get him for a decent price. I think he's going to give you some good games. Is he going to be super consistent? I'm not sure about that. But I mean, if we're looking at, we always want to crown winners at this stuff. If we're talking about the winner of free agency 2 days in, I think the Houston Texans are absolutely rolling. They've made fantastic moves, but I've also, I talked about this with a few other people. It's amazing when you have a young quarterback that is the guy. He is the man. You have no questions how much that opens things up for your front office. How you can go out and you can sign guys, you can make moves when you got a CJ Stroud locked in. It's like they're, I mean, can you look at a team that's more different from 2 years ago than the Houston Texans? I mean, they were a dumpster fire 2 years ago, and all of a sudden they got CJ Stroud, leads in the playoffs. Now they're signing everybody. D'Amico Ryan is getting his system together. He's signing his guys that he wants in free agency. I mean, this team is, oh man, as a Colts season ticket holder, I'm scared to see the Texans here over the next couple of years, man. They are looking real good. I love what they're doing.
Oh yeah. And let's talk about Deontay Johnson to the Panthers. What do we think about this deal? I mean, there was some games last year where Adam Thielen was a pretty solid fantasy play. Are we going to see that kind of production out of Deontay Johnson? I mean, what's our thoughts here?
I think if anything, it helps Bryce Young. He's Deontay Johnson still, is still young, could still play. As of 2 years ago, he was considered to be, an up and coming wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Then, the last year and a half has happened, and he's kind of dropped off people's radar a little bit. But I think the move to Carolina really helps his career, and I also think it helps Bryce Young's. Now, you got the dog. Let me see that dog.
This is my new puppy, and she just woke up. And and she needs to go out to the potty. So I will depart for a moment, guys. You all continue going there. Oh, goodness.
Yeah. Well, Joe. So Tommy, I will agree with you on Deontay here. I actually think this he's been just clamoring for more targets. And if I'm Bryce Young, I am just gonna pepper Deontay Johnson. So I think initial fantasy value, it looks like a downgrade. But then when you really start looking at it, you're like, who else is really there in Carolina? Like,
Nobody.
This might be really nice for Deontay Johnson owners, and that he just gets peppered. I had a feeling the Steelers were going to make a move with him. They signed him on that kind of bridge contract a couple years, 2 years ago. He was coming up on the last year of his deal. Everything that was going around Pittsburgh was saying, like, he had been unhappy in the locker room. He'd been causing some problems. There's word about him getting into the QBs the last couple of years. I just did not see the Steelers just going all out, even though he's still young, 27 years old. He's going to be 28 in July. So it's not like he's an old receiver. It just felt like the Steelers were right at the end where they're like, hey, we're not going to pay this guy big money. And I think they saw this wide receiver class, and we know the history of the wide receivers in Pittsburgh. They do a really good job of drafting wide receivers. They made this move, got rid of Deontay. Hate to see him go, but I think it helps them in fantasy. But also, I think this opens up the Steelers to a second or third round rookie pick at wide receiver. I think they make that move, but they also got Deontay Jackson back in return. Now, I know people are down on him a little bit as a cornerback because he's been banged up the last couple of years, but when he was healthy, he was one of the top guys in the league. So the Steelers were looking for that second cornerback opposite Joey Porter Jr. And I think that's where they really like this. They saw Jackson. They said, hey, this guy's got a chance to be our number 2 on the other side of the field. We're going to get rid of the guy who has 1 year left on his deal that we're probably not going to sign long-term. And I think they decided, hey, let's make the move now and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I think this moves them into drafting a O-lineman in the first round. I think they were on cornerback, but I think making this move maybe makes them reconsider, do I take corner early or go O-line? I think they go O-line, and I think definitely wide receiver in play for the Steelers in the second or third round for sure. Like I said, if Jackson can stay healthy, this is going to end up looking like a really nice deal, I think, for the Steelers eventually. But again, if he only plays 3 games, I think they're going to regret it a little bit.
Well, the Panthers go from being what looked like major losers yesterday with the Brian Burns trade to now getting a legit wide receiving weapon for Bryce Young. So on one hand, they lost a lot on defense with losing Luvu and losing Dante Jackson and losing Brian Burns. But you can't help but think that they got better overall because their offense was so putrid last year.
Yeah, even if they lose defense, and here's the thing is, I think I hate to just rip on teams, but I think they're a bottom 3 team again next year, no matter what.
Probably. That roster's still atrocious.
It's still atrocious. But what I would rather do, here's what I'd rather do. If I'm Carolina Panthers, and I moved up to number 1 to get Bryce Young. I would much rather spend my resources on offense and make sure my quarterback is playing well and in games and have a bad defense than spend that and have my supposedly star quarterback crumble in front of my eyes because we don't get him anyone.
Well, the NFL is about offense anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd rather go Bears route last year, which I actually thought was kind of a nice move. The last couple of years with Justin Fields was like, hey, let's like start trying to add some offensive weapons. If we're bad on defense, at least we're going to be in shootouts and our quarterback's going to look better. And then we can work on like getting our defense better later. Because again, you don't want to crush Bryce Young's value. You don't want to crush. You just don't want to crush his outlook. Like, hey, we're bad. I'm bad. Like, you just don't want to kill his confidence. So I'd rather move some of those guys and at least get some guys to see, can we get him better? And then we can turn around, sign guys later when this team's ready to compete. Because this team ain't ready to compete. They know they're not. There's no reason to sign high-priced defensive players right now if you're the Panthers. There's no reason for it. Get a couple guys on offense, make your quarterback look better, make him like see if he's the man. He can do it, and then go from there. Because this team is out of it.
Yeah, Carolina's going to be in a bad spot here for the next several years, anyways, just because they don't want to be draft picks. I mean, What a stupid move last year. Not only did they get rid of DJ Moore, but then they also traded away their first round pick this year. For a team that didn't have much to begin with, now you have even less because you have no way to build it.
Yeah, they should probably just focus on the offensive side of the ball just to develop Bryce Young. And then maybe they can start adding some defensive pieces once they feel like that's what they're going to need to really compete, once they feel like they're a little closer. But right now they should just focus on getting him some confidence, getting him some weapons, just so that he can develop into what they hope, a number 1 pick, should develop into. So moving on, there's not a whole lot of news today. We kind of covered Sam Darnold. We covered Tyrod Taylor. But let's talk about, oh, by the way, I don't know what it is with the Patriots and tight ends, but they just signed Austin Hooper. Just don't know what's going on there with.
Yeah, they also re-signed Hunter Henry.
They re-signed Hunter Henry, which I don't think is a terrible re-signing. I actually kind of wish he would have gone somewhere else because I still think Hunter Henry has got something left in the tank. Mike Gesicki going to the Bengals, I think, is very interesting, especially for fantasy purposes, because he was a cut candidate, like for fantasy managers. They were like, everybody was dropping him. I did a couple orphans where we did a dispersal draft and where I took over an orphan, and man, Mike Gesicki was like one of the last guys still out there in one of these leagues. So like people have given up on Mike Gesicki. I think this is a nice spot with the Bengals because I don't think, here's the deal. I think if Tyler Boyd signs somewhere else, which I think he will, I think they think Gesicki could kind of play that Boyd role as that kind of slot receiver, play across the middle, do some of the short yardage stuff for them, and they can always have one of the other guys block. And so I think Gesicki, at least, I'm not going to get too excited. I'm not going to go out and tell everybody to trade everyone for Mike Gesicki. I'm not doing crazy talk like that. But he at least is intriguing now that he's on a good offense. And if they can figure out how to use him as more of a slot receiver with Tyler Boyd gone, I think this could be interesting, at least as like, if you're desperate for tight end help in fantasy, I think Gesicki could maybe be there because the guy, we've shown it. He's got elite athletic skills for a tight end, but he has to be used in a specific way. And if he's not, he becomes completely worthless for your fantasy team and for real life football if you don't use him right.
Yeah, well, you were right about, you got to be kind of desperate, because I remember being in a few pinches last season where I was actually having to play Tanner Hudson of Cincinnati. So yeah, I could see a lot of folks in that position again, and so Gesicki could, could help.
They also re-signed Drew Sample, so they bring back Sample, they bring in Gesicki, and I think this kind of maybe setting them up, because I think this sets them up in case Brock Bowers does not fall to them at number 18. I really think that
I agree.
I really
I
think they
just
want to go
think you're
Bowers.
starting to see. I agree. I think they want to get Bowers at 18, but I think these teams are finally starting to get ahead of the curve and go, hey, in case we don't get that guy we really want in the draft, maybe we go out and sign a cheaper older guy so we're not left with nothing.
Exactly.
And that's where I'm seeing a lot of these signings. A lot of these signings it's almost like the writing's on the wall. You can kind of see what these teams want to do, and they're going, hey, we're getting this guy just in case. Like, hey, if Brock Bowers doesn't fall to us, we don't want to go into another season with absolutely no receiving tight end. And Mike Gesicki at 1 year, 3.25. I mean, it's nothing.
I mean, it's low risk.
3.25. It's so super low risk, high reward for him. And again, if they get Bowers, they might cut Gesicki. At that point, they might get the camp and be like, yeah, we don't even need this guy now. But if they don't get him, if the Colts take him at 15 or somebody else, gets traded and moves into that, early teen spot and takes him, maybe they get jumped and they're like, we got to have a backup plan just in case.
Yeah. So let's, we've kind of touched on these tight ends and stuff going on. That's my dog whimpers over there. Let's get on to these running back moves today before we wrap things up. Let's start with Aaron Jones, signing with the Vikings. I know it seems like forever ago when this happened, but it did happen today. So what's our thoughts there as far as his fantasy production? I mean, do we think? Hold on.
I'll jump in there on Aaron Jones for the Vikings. I actually really like this signing for the Vikings. When they let Dalvin Cook go, it didn't seem like it was going to be that big of a deal, but that offense just was not the same without Dalvin Cook. They just didn't produce the same. I think Aaron Jones, obviously, he's, not the long-term answer. He's a guy's, going to turn 30 or is already 30. He's right around there. But I like him in this Minnesota offense. I think he's got he's guys shows he's got a little bit left. He was great in the playoffs last year. Obviously, the Packers are young as can be, and they said, hey, let's just keep getting younger. And they went and got Josh Jacobs, who's very similar to Aaron Jones, just 4 years younger. So I can understand them making that move with their younger team. But I actually like this signing. I know originally, I think I read the Packers were asking him to take $6 million. He didn't want to take the cut as far as the pay cut, so they ended up cutting him. He ends up signing 1 year, $7 million for the Vikings. Tommy, what do you think? But I actually think he could be pretty productive in Minnesota, and I kind of like hey, I'm going to go to a division rival. Let's see how you cut me. Let's see how that happens. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I kind of think Minnesota's going to be pretty terrible this year.
There's a chance they're really bad. Like that. You're right. There's a chance that they're like this team is in the mix if everything goes right. But you're right. They feel like they're a team that is like if one little thing doesn't go their way, they're going to end up being a bad team.
Yeah, you don't really have a quarterback there. I mean, if you're going into the season with Sam Darnold as your starting quarterback, you got issues. Obviously, I think they're going to target a quarterback in the draft. But again, you're rolling with a rookie quarterback. How many rookie quarterbacks, lead their teams to the playoffs? Not very many of them, right? Mm-hmm. So the addition of Aaron Jones there, I think, is a little bit of a smokescreen. It's just a 1 year deal. They know they're probably not going to be very good anyways, so they just want to kind of throw a guy out there and be like, listen, this is our offense right now.
Well, in fantasy purposes, I just think he could be very useful this year because, again, if you get a team that's not good and they got a guy on a 1 year deal, it's an older guy, they're not worried about saving anything.
They're going to run
him to use him. Yep. And here's the thing is, if they got Sam Darnold or another young rookie quarterback, dump off all day long.
And he's very good at it.
Jones could end up with 1 million catches this year. That's why I like it, because if they end up being bad, I think Aaron Jones could still end up being good for fantasy purposes, even if if the Vikings are bad, he might actually be even better for fantasy because they are bad and they have to go to him and they have to rely on him. So I think it's a sneaky play for fantasy. I kind of like Aaron Jones to the Vikings. I really do.
Well, it's nice too, because when you saw him get cut, you're like, oh crap. Like people that were
going to go
Jones
Dallas.
owners, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Just like when Mixon got cut, you were like, oh my God. All those Mixon owners don't know what to do, but a lot of these guys ended up in really, really good situations. So, it's not as bad as it was going to be. So. Let's talk
Bob,
about another running
Bob,
back.
I was going to say, Bob, let's
Yeah.
talk about your guy, your team, Baltimore
What?
Ravens.
What did they do? Did they do something? What happened?
I thought they signed a stud today. Was I wrong on that? I thought
Did they get a guy?
Stud. I thought they got a guy. I think they got a guy today.
Yeah, I think they did. They getting Derrick Henry today for essentially paying the same price as Tony Pollard or
the exact same
DeAndre
contract
Swift.
almost for 1 year less in the contract, but $8 million a year. Same thing for Tony Pollard. What is the Tennessee Titans doing? This is you jump back in. I'm so excited.
Well,
I just feel like this is fantasy gold. Derrick Henry. Everyone talks every year about just give the Ravens a stud, cute running back for 1 freaking year, and I think we've got it now.
I'm in the middle of putting together, over at DynastyProsFootball.com, we have been producing a ton of content over the last couple of days. Every time a free agent signs or someone gets traded, we're putting up articles, free agent, fantasy impact on all these guys. I mean, we've been really, really on top of it there. I'm currently in the middle of doing the Derrick Henry article, and just the more I think about it, I'm trying not to look through purple colored glasses by any means, but you think about that run pass option of Baltimore, and you think about Derrick Henry and the touchdown opportunities he's going to have, but then you think about how these teams have to load the box to stop someone like Derrick Henry, leaving all of this open field for a Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers. Rashad Bateman might be, serviceable, might be playable in fantasy leagues. It really, I mean, just think about that. And then, what if Lamar just decides to keep the ball and take it himself? I mean, when teams have to prepare for, there's not a lot of running backs you have to legitimately prepare for. And Derrick Henry is one of those guys you have to prepare for. Adding that to that Baltimore offense, they didn't lose their offensive coordinator. It's about the only frigging coach they didn't lose, but just makes that team scarier. I really think that it helps. I see Derrick Henry's fantasy production increasing. He could lead the league in rushing this year. He could lead the league in touchdowns this year. I think it really increases the production of someone like Lamar Jackson. When you have these teams having to load the box to stop someone like a Derrick Henry, that's going to make things easier for Lamar Jackson and that passing attack. I think everyone on this offense benefits significantly because of this one signing. Derrick Henry's not the guy he was 5 years ago. But
he's still Derrick Henry. He's not dead. It's not like you've seen him drop off a cliff and you're like, oh, we're hoping we put him on a good team and now he's going to get back to that. He's still been good. And like you're saying, if you're a Lamar Jackson owner, I just think this you got to be excited about this. I saw a stat today. Tennessee was in the bottom 3 the last 4 years that Derrick Henry was on the team. They were in the bottom 3 at yards gained before contact. Guess who was number 1 in that time? The Ravens. Ravens were number 1 in yards gained by a running back before they got touched. Tennessee was bottom 3 every year. That means Derrick Henry was hitting people, bouncing off, and having to make plays himself right away. And he's one of the I don't think he's been worse than 10th in his entire career of yards after contact. So now you're going to get a guy as big as him with another 1.5 yards, 2 yards ahead of steam before he gets touched.
Then you've got and Baltimore has Patrick Ricard, all-pro fullback, who's a 300-pounder who does his job better than anyone in the NFL and clears a path. So you think about, I even saw someone post, tweet at Patrick Queen today about think about having to, get around Patrick Ricard just to get to Derrick Henry. And then somebody retweeted that and sent it to Patrick Queen, which was really quite funny. I think it was Patrick Ricard who retweeted it, and he was like, "Yeah, man." So
I would hate to take on both those guys. I mean, Patrick Queen to the Steelers. We talked before the show, Bob. I know you're a Ravens guy, I'm a Steelers guy, but I mean, I wanted Patrick Queen so bad for the Steelers because they need an inside linebacker so bad. But man, they're not lying. Having to go through Ricard to get to Henry, like you better hope you got 2 or 3 more guys coming behind you, or you're not making it there. You're not making
exactly
that
that one move. And I mean, there wasn't a better fit. There probably wasn't a better free agent fit in all of the NFL this offseason than Derrick Henry for the Ravens. I mean, he's that downfield runner. That's what they do perfectly. And he's just a battering ram. And it's very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to it, but Baltimore's not done. They've got they have other moves. I think they'd like to bring back Jadeveon Clowney. I'd like to see them maybe look at someone like a Bobby Wagner to fill that Patrick Queen void. There's some moves to be made there. That, like I said, they wait till that second, third, fourth wave of free agency before they really pounce and strike. They like to take some of those guys that have to take more team-friendly deals because the money dries up. They're masters at that. Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy. I mean, guys like that.
I totally agree with you, Bob. And I also think they were smart because they weren't the first in on Henry. They waited till like Barkley signed and Swift and a couple guys signed, and they're like, "Oh, we have our mark." Like, okay, these top end, like Barkley's going to get like 12. Everybody else is getting like 8 or 9. They're like, okay, boom, we can hit him up 2 years, $8 million a year. I mean, it was like usually the Ravens wait, but I thought they timed that up perfectly to get Henry. They just waited until the first couple big guys signed, Jacobs signed, Barkley signed, and they said, boom, we can go about $4 million less and get our guy Henry. To me, it made total sense.
Well,
as a Ravens hater, I love the freaking move. I think it's great. I think it's an absolute fantastic move.
Yeah, just as I'm just as equally as happy for someone like Patrick Queen. I mean, to the Steelers, oh man, I thought he was destined for Seattle, but it is what it is. But here's the question: we bring up these running backs. You've got these signings like a DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard. You've got who do we just mention? Saquon. You have Josh Jacobs, and then you've got Derrick Henry. Who do you think out of that group? Who do you think will be the top 3 fantasy producers by the end of next season? Like, who do you think, if you're ranking those guys? Don't think about age. Don't think about anything, but production. Who do you think is going to finish number 1, 2, 3?
Saquon number 1, going to that offense with Philly. That offensive line is really, really good. Also, I know they obviously they just lost Jason Kelce, but that offensive line is still really, really good. He's never had a good offensive line to run behind, and now he does. Think about how productive he was in his early seasons without a good offensive line. Now he's going to have a good one. I think he's in for a special season.
Yeah, if I had to rank it in order, I would agree with Tommy. I'd say Saquon 1, Derrick Henry 2, Josh Jacobs 3, DeAndre Swift 4. Those would be my top 4 guys there. Now, here's the difference maker for me. I think Barkley's slightly ahead of Derrick Henry, slightly, just for the offense, everything. It's going to come down to touchdowns. If Barkley can't get in the end zone because he's going down on the 2 and they're giving it to Hurts every time, that's where I think you see the difference maker. I think you could see Barkley actually dominate Henry in every offensive category and Henry end up with like 6 more touchdowns to kind of even things out. I really do, because I think the Ravens, now that they actually have Gus Edwards was good on the goal line, and Gus Edwards ain't no Derrick Henry. So, I mean, I just think you're going to see them go, hey, man, why are we killing Lamar when we just give it to Derrick Henry? I just think it makes more sense. And I think Barkley's the guy I want dynasty-wise. I also, if it came down to my pick and it was Barkley or Henry in a redraft, oh, man, it'd be real close. I'd probably take Barkley slightly over Henry, but I love the Henry spot. But I do think it's going to come down to touchdowns. And I think that's where Henry might have a big advantage over Barkley.
Yeah, the Saquon thing, like Philly always likes to, they just always seem to have like 2 or 3 backs, like Boston Scott's going to get all these touches or Kenneth Gainwell or something like that. That's always been my issue with Philly. And then the thing that really separates it for me is that damn tush push. They can get down
I've
there.
never seen a team have so many guys tackle on the 1-yard line. I watched way too many Eagles games last year, and I was just like, every game, I'm like, how did you not get in the end zone? How did you not? Literally every wideouts, tight ends, running backs. It didn't matter who it was. Everyone got tackled inside the 2-yard line. Like no one scored. I'm like, what is going on? It blew my mind.
I'm calling it now that Derrick Henry outscores Saquon Barkley next season.
I actually
Fantasy.
don't think that's
full
too
point
crazy.
PPR. I'm going full PPR without anybody going half point, standard, whatever it is. I'm thinking Derrick Henry outscores him. It may be close.
Crazy, though. I don't think that's crazy at all, though.
No.
It really depends on how many passes that Barkley gets, I think. Because I definitely think Henry out TDs him. I think Henry ends up with like 5 or 6 more TDs than Barkley.
He'll certainly have plenty more touchdowns. Just because of the Jalen Hurts, the tush push thing. The brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, I'm going with it. I'm going to say Derrick Henry outscores Saquon next season. So, well, all right. Anybody else got anything to add here before we turn it off?
The only one I was going to mention, I don't know how much I talked about it before, but the Darnell Mooney to the Falcons. I was going to mention, as someone who has a ton of Darnell Mooney shares in fantasy, I actually think it's a decent landing spot. Now, I think they paid quite a bit of money, $13 million a year for 3 years. Good for Darnell Mooney. But there was no wide receiver too. Mac Hollins was your wide receiver too. When the Falcons signed him, he was wide receiver 6 for the Miami Dolphins when they signed him. And he was their number 2 wide receiver. I think it's a great spot for him. Drake London's going to get all the hard work. He's going to get all the hard passes. Mooney's going to take the top off. You're going to have Pitts in there. Now, is Mooney going to get 130 targets? No. But is he going to be playable as a flex play in fantasy? I think he could be, especially with Cousins. I just think he's going to get some of those deep balls. Just think Jordan Addison last year for the Vikings.
That's exactly why they got
That's
him.
where I see. That's why I see Mooney is being the Jordan Addison on that team. He's going to be considered the 3rd, 4th option, and people are going to forget about him. I actually love that signing for the Falcons and for Mooney. I just think that's a nice landing spot for him, especially for fantasy owners. I have him everywhere. I saw that signing. I'm like that's going to help this year big time.
Yeah.
Any idea what the guaranteed money is there?
Oh, it was 20.
It was 3 years, 39 million.
39 million was that. 20. Yeah, it's 3 years, 39 million. I thought it was close to 20 guaranteed.
Okay, well, because what I was going to say is this could very
well. Even Gabe Davis signed for like damn near the same contract. Yeah. It was like almost.
I think 26 million's guaranteed.
Okay,
and it's a 15 million signing bonus.
Yeah, so it's going to be at least a 2-year deal, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right. Well, guys, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. I know, JT, I know you got to get off here like right now. You've got a show to do with Fantasy and Frames.
I got to mock it up. I got to mock it up. We got to get.
Yes,
we got to do some drafting.
Yes, you tell Nate and Jorge you give them my best. All right. So everybody, thanks for watching tonight's episode. We'll be back tomorrow night. But in the meantime, be sure to go over to dynastyprosfootball.com. Check out all of our content on all these free agent moves. There's a lot of fantasy stuff, a lot of fantasy goodness in there, letting you know what to do with these guys, who to trade, who not to trade. And be sure, if you haven't found us or followed us on YouTube, do us a quick favor. Go over there and hit subscribe. It really, really helps us out, trying to build up our fan base there. So in the meantime, for myself, for JT, for Tommy, we appreciate you watching. Until next time, we'll see you tomorrow night.